Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video in our presentation series. Today we're going to be going over Book 6, Unit 8, Grammar 1, and the topic of today's video is casual subordinators and prepositional phrases. Well, just a quick little note on this video so we have an idea of what we're going to be doing. We use casual subordinators as part of complex sentences that involve a dependent and independent clause, something that we've covered quite extensively in the previous units, in the previous module, at least this module. And just remember that a dependent clause requires an independent clause to stand as a sentence, while an independent clause is a grammatically correct sentence that can stand on its own. We should also note that when we're using casual coordinators, that this will determine whether or not we use a comma. So if we start the sentence with the independent clause and a casual subordinator, then we would have it separated by the main independent clause by a comma. But if the sentence begins with the main independent clause, then there is no comma. And one other note, we can also note that we use casual subordinators for at least 4 different reasons. We can use them to contrast. For example, although, even though, whereas, and while are all casual subordinators which are used to contrast 2 different ideas. They can also be used as part of a cause or effect sentence. For example, since and because. We can also use them in conditional sentences, using if and unless, for example. The other most common use of casual subordinators is that we use them in time sentences. These subordinators include after, as soon as, before, whenever, when, and until. Whereas prepositional phrases, we should say that a prepositional phrase consists of a preposition and the words which follow it. And the words that follow it are commonly known as the complement. And the words that follow it most commonly, the complement are commonly a noun phrase or a pronoun, but also an adverb phrase, a verb in the ing form, or less commonly, a prepositional phrase, or even a WH clause. Now, if that all sounds a bit complicated, don't worry, because we'll be going into a lot of this in a lot more detail in the following slides to come. This is just to give you a brief idea of what we're going to expect in the coming slides. So let's begin. So, quick review. A clause is a group of words containing a subject and a verb plus any object the verb requires. Again, a clause is a group of words containing a subject and a verb plus any object the verb requires. For example, I watched a movie. I watched a movie. I is the subject, watched is the verb, and a movie is the object. We can see here that this would be an example of a independent or main clause because it is a full sentence. It also involves a finite verb, a verb that reflects a tense. As we can see here, it's in the past simple tense. Another way of reviewing what a clause is, we can think of a clause as the basic unit of grammar. a clause must contain a verb, and typically a clause is made up of a subject, a verb phrase, and sometimes a complement, as we discussed. An independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. That means it does not require a dependent clause to be a full sentence. So as I just said in the previous sentence, I watched a movie is an independent clause. It is a complete sentence. We don't need to add anything to this sentence because it expresses a full and complete idea. Another way of thinking about what a main clause is, or an independent clause, we could use main clauses to form sentences on their own, that they aren't dependent on other clauses, and they are always finite, right? Finite just means that the verb reflects a tense. Contrasting the main clause is that a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence, right? As we discussed, a main clause, independent clause can be its full sentence, but a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. For example, when I watched a movie, this isn't a full sentence. This time clause is not a complete sentence. It is a sentence fragment. When I watched a movie, it doesn't introduce any further idea to complete the sentence, so it's not correct. It wouldn't be accepted on an exam, for example. We should also note that subordinate clauses, as we know, they cannot form a sentence on their own, and that they are dependent on independent clauses to form sentences. And the last thing we can notice is that the verb can be finite or non-finite. That means the verb doesn't have to always reflect the tense. It could be a stative verb instead of an action verb. So, as a bit of a practice, let's identify if each of the following sentences are a complete sentence or a fragment. So for number one, I like cookies. Number one, I like cookies. Number two, even though I am tired. Two, even though I am tired. Number three, while they work. Number three, while they work. The last one, number four, how is she today? Last one, number four, how is she today? So I'd like you now to just take out a pencil or paper and either take a snapshot of this slide and take a note of which sentences you believe are complete sentences, that is, those that are independent clauses, and those which are dependent clauses, meaning that they are incomplete or fragments of a sentence. So please pause the video now to take a screenshot and practice by identifying if each of the sentences are a complete sentence or not. I'll give you 30 seconds to pause the video. Okay, that should be just enough time for you to identify if each sentence is complete or merely a fragment. Let's now move on to the next slide to reveal the answers. And remember, because we're at this high level, it is really important to take advantage of every practice opportunity we have in these kind of videos. So if you haven't done that, please go ahead and do that now. If you finish the practice, let's look at the answers. So the answers for number 1, I like cookies. This is clearly a complete sentence. This is a complete sentence. It is an independent clause. It expresses a complete idea. The tense is in the present finite sense. Number 2, even though I am tired. Even though I am tired, it is very clearly a sentence fragment. It is a sentence fragment. Why? Why? Because it doesn't express a clear idea. Even though I am tired, what? If this were a full sentence, it would be followed by a comma, followed by an explanation. Even though I'm tired, I still go to class, for example. Even though I'm tired, I still go to work. Number 3, while they work. 3, while they work. This again is a very clear sentence fragment. Very clear sentence fragment. Why is that? Just as we mentioned for the previous sentence, this sentence only expresses half an idea. While they work, what? What happens? What happens while they work? While they work, I take a break. While they work, I have lunch, for example. Number 4, how is she today? Question mark. How is she today? Question mark. This is a complete sentence. Why it is a complete sentence? Well, it very clearly expresses an idea, which is we're asking how the person is. And we have the finite tense, present simple, we have the verb, we have the subject, and the complement. And of course the BH word to say, the BH word to signify question. So, subordinators. What are subordinators? Well, subordinators are words that change an independent clause into a dependent clause. Any sentence with a subordinator must have 2 clauses. Again, subordinators are words that change an independent clause into a dependent clause. Any sentence with a subordinator must have 2 clauses. What are the 2 types of clauses again? Or the 2 different clauses? That's right, the 2 different clauses are independent and dependent. And remember that there are 4 different types of subordinators. 4 different types of subordinators. What are the 4 different types? I mentioned in the first slide. What are they? Well, the one that we're going to focus on, the cause and effect subordinators. For example, since and become. Since and become are cause and effect subordinators. We also use subordinators to contrast 2 ideas. For example, although, even though, whereas, and while are all subordinators that we use to contrast 2 or more ideas. We can also use subordinators for conditional senses. For example, if and unless are 2 common subordinators used for conditional sentences. And what is the last type of subordinator? Again, remember I mentioned this at the beginning of the presentation, and there are a lot of examples of this. Can you tell me? That's right, time. We often use subordinators as part of time sentences. For example, after, as soon as, before, whenever, when, or until. Again, while we must remember that subordinators are words that change an independent clause into a dependent clause, and that in any sentence there must, with a subordinator, there must be two clauses, we just need to remember that that subordinators are used for four different reasons, and those are to contrast two ideas, to demonstrate cause and effect relationships as part of a conditional sentence, and in time-related sentences. For example, the independent clause, I played a game on my phone yesterday. I played a game on my phone yesterday. This can stand alone as a complete sentence. Why? Because we have the subject, we have the verb in the finite form, and the complement. Example, I played a game, that would be fine, and complement on my phone yesterday. It's a fine, perfectly good sentence. Whereas in the dependent clause, because I played a game on my phone yesterday. Because I played a game on my phone yesterday, this requires a separate independent clause if it is not a full sentence. For example, because I played a game on my phone yesterday, I didn't finish my homework. Because I played a game on my phone yesterday, I didn't finish my homework. So, this example is a good way to show that dependent clauses require an independent clause to express a full idea and to be a complete, grammatically complete sentence. So, as we previously mentioned, there are four different types of subordinators, and we use them for various reasons, including cause and effect. Examples include because, since, and as. All of them are used to introduce the cause of an action. X, because Z, Y, or since Y, Z. As X, Y. Examples. Because I am dependent on my phone, I am very upset if I lose it. I am dependent on my phone is the cause. This is what initiates the effect. I am very upset if I lose it. This is the effect or the result of the cause, which is the action, the state of being dependent on your phone. Since smartphone dependency has become common, many people are experiencing neck pain. Since smartphone dependency has become common, many people are experiencing neck pain. So in the blue text, we see smartphone dependency has become common. Again, this is the cause, this is the action, and the result or the effect is that many people are experiencing neck pain. Which one happens first, the dependency or the neck pain? That's right. The cause in each sentence is what starts the result. Without the cause, there is no effect or no result. One more example is a cause and effect subordinator. As she has been using her phone a lot, she has started getting headaches. As she has been using her phone a lot, she has started getting headaches. So we can see that using her phone a lot is the cause of the headaches. Getting the headaches is the effect or the result of the action which started it, the cause. Using the phone resulted in her getting headaches. And subordinators do not have to come at the beginning of a sentence. The clause they introduce can come later in the sentence. However, they are still introducing the cause. Again, subordinators do not have to come at the beginning of a sentence. The clause they introduce can come later in the sentence. However, they are still introducing the cause. So that means that you don't have to have the dependent clause at the beginning. You can have the dependent clause in the second half of the sentence and the main or independent clause at the beginning. It just affects whether you need a comma or not. When would we use a comma if we have the dependent clause first? That's right. We would put the comma after the dependent clause, as we'll see in the following slides. For example, I am very upset if I lose my phone because I am dependent on it. I am very upset if I lose my phone because I am dependent on it. Becoming very upset is the effect, is the result, and the cause is is the dependency. The dependency causes the result of being very upset. And we noticed that in the previous slides, we had the cause first, followed by the effect or result, and this time we were able to flip it around. Many people are experiencing neck pain since cell phone dependency has become common. Many people are experiencing neck pain since cell phone dependency has become common. So again, we can see that the neck pain is the effect, it is the result of the cause, which is phone dependency. Phone dependency caused the neck pain in many people. So again, a little bit of practice. This time we're going to identify which clause is the cause and which is the effect. Again, you're going to identify which clause is the cause and which is the effect. So for this one, number one, people should take smartphone dependency seriously because it can have serious effects. Once more, people should take smartphone dependency seriously because it can have serious effects. So, just one note of reminder, a good way of determining where each clause begins or finishes is to look out for the subordinator. If you can spot the subordinator, you should be able to complete these practice sentences quite easily. So again, if you haven't already, please take out your pencil and paper and underline which part of the sentence you believe is the cause and which is the effect. I'll give you 30 seconds to go ahead and do that now. Okay, should be more than enough time. Let's go ahead and look at the answer for number one. Yeah. What is the, before we read the answer, what is the subordinator in this case? Did you spot it? That's right, because. So if you noticed because, then you would have known that the second half of the sentence, because it can have a serious effects, is the cause, which results in the effect. People should take smartphone dependency seriously. Okay, you're going to do the same thing again for number 2. As smartphone use increases, doctors are seeing more patients with neck problems. 2. As smartphone use increases, doctors are seeing more patients with neck problems. Again, before you start, what do you notice about this sentence that might indicate which half of the sentence is the dependent or independent clause? There's something which marks the distinction between the two parts of the sentence. If you can find what it is, you can do this easily. Go ahead and pause the video now to underline the cause and effect. 30 seconds. Okay, let's now turn the page and look at the next slide. And do you notice what part of the sentence you should have noticed, which points out the start and ending of the two different clauses? That's right, the comma. The comma is a good indicator to show where one clause begins and the other ends. So, as smartphone use increases, this is the cause. Doctors are seeing more patients with neck problems being the result. We have the dependent clause at the beginning, followed by the main clause, and divided by the comma. And as we just mentioned, when the dependent clause comes first, like we saw in the previous slide, you need a comma. And when the dependent clause comes second, you don't need a comma. And we can notice this in these two example sentences because these sentences both have independent and main clauses. We have when marks the dependent clause, and you need a comma is the independent clause. And the same goes again with the second sentence. When the dependent clause comes second, is the dependent clause in, you don't need a comma, is the independent clause. This would be a good slide to take a screenshot for good safekeeping. Some examples of these rules. The developers must be getting lots of money as that app is so popular. The developers must be getting lots of money as that app is so popular. Well, we have the main clause first. Developers must be getting lots of money is first, so it doesn't need a comma. Whereas in the second sentence, as more people are using their smartphones in public places, comma, we have the dependent clause first, so we need to separate it from the main clause. Accents are becoming more common by a comma. It needs a comma because the dependent clause comes first. It needs a comma. So again, some further practice. You're now going to decide if the sentence needs a comma or not. Number 1, because smartphones are so useful, many millions of people now own them. Once more, because smartphones are so useful, many millions of people now own them. Go ahead and pause the video now to determine if the sentence needs a comma or not. 30 seconds. Okay, that should just be enough time since you're just finding where to put the comma. Let's look at the answer. Number 1, that's right. We put the comma between useful and millions because smartphones are so useful is the dependent clause, followed by the main clause, millions of people now own them. Again, you're going to do the same thing for number 2. Smartphone apps have become the most popular kind of software since smartphones are so popular. Again, smartphone apps have become the most popular kind of software since smartphones are so popular. Take the time now to decide if the sentence needs a comma or not. I'll give you about 20 seconds for this one. Okay, let's now turn the page, so to speak, and look at the answer. Yes, number 2. What do we notice? We notice that it does not need a comma. Why does the sentence not need a comma? Remember back to the rules we introduced before we started these practice sentences. That's right, we have no need for a comma because the sentence begins with the main clause, independent clause. Smartphone apps have become the most popular kind of software. And the same thing again for number 3. As smartphones become popular, companies began using them in a wide variety of types, styles, and sizes. As smartphones became popular, companies began making them in a wide variety of styles. Go ahead now and pause the video to answer the question. Okay, let's have a look. The answer, it needs a comma. How do we know? Well, a good indicator was the fact that the sentence began with a subordinator as. As smartphones become popular, comma. As smartphones become popular is the dependent clause, while companies began making them in a wide variety of types, styles, and sizes is the main clause. And in addition to subordinators, you can also use some prepositional phrases for the same purpose. These phrases work in the same way as subordinators. Some of you might be asking, well, first off, what is a prepositional phrase? Well, that just brings us back to the first slide when I said that a prepositional phrase consists of a preposition, such as into, in, for, with, preposition, and the words which follow it. And the words that follow the preposition are usually the complement, and are most commonly a noun phrase or pronoun, but also an adverb phrase, a verb in the ing form, or less commonly, another prepositional phrase, or a WH clause. So again, we should remember that we can use prepositional phrases for the same purpose as subordinators. They work in the same way. So prepositional phrases similar to subordinators that show cause, due to the fact that, because of the fact that, due to the fact that there is COVID right now, we have online classes. Because of the fact that it is raining, we are canceling the picnic outside. And just like subordinators, these prepositional phrases introduce the cause. They come at the beginning of the cause clause. Sentences with these phrases must have two clauses or they are not complete sentences. Once more, just like subordinators, these prepositional phrases, due to the fact that, because of the fact that, introduce the cause, they must come at the beginning of the cause clause. Sentences with these phrases must have two clauses or they are not complete sentences. Example, due to the fact that, again, this would be the cause clause, and so many people are using smartphones. Many places have made laws against using them while driving is the effect. So many people using smartphones results in the effect of countries making laws against using them while driving. Secondary example, many restaurants are using menus you can use on your smartphone. This is the effect because of the fact that people are worried about germs. The cause clause. So the germs cause the effect of restaurants putting their menus on a smartphone. In addition, there are some other prepositional phrases that can be used to show cause and effect. However, they work differently than subordinators and the prepositional phrases we already learned. Again, there are some other phrases that can be used to show cause and effect, but they work differently than subordinators and prepositional phrases, the ones we've covered so far. These prepositional phrases only require a noun or a noun phrase after them, not a complete cause. So again, some prepositional phrases that we haven't covered only require a noun or a noun phrase after them, and they do not require a complete clause after them to be a full sentence. Some of these casual prepositional phrases that require a noun or noun phrase include due to, as a result of, as a consequence of, because of. Some examples. Due to smartphone use, life is more convenient. Due to is the prepositional phrase which introduces the noun phrase. Smartphone use, life is more convenient, being the independent clause. Because of sets up the noun smart phrase. Smartphones and games are more popular than ever, being the main independent clause. Further example, people are getting headaches as a result of bad posture while using smartphones. So again, the prepositional phrase as a result of sets up the noun phrase bad posture while using smartphones, which leaves people are getting headaches as the main independent clause.
I need your consent on a few items to continue.
Okay. So let's further practice. We're going to identify if the underlined part is a noun phrase or a complete clause, and if it is the correct grammar. Number 1, due to smartphone dependency, some people feel anxious when their smartphone isn't near them. Again, due to smartphone dependency, some people feel anxious when their smartphone isn't near them. Read through the sentence and determine if the underlined part is a noun phrase or a complete clause, and if it is correct grammar. Go ahead and pause the video now to determine the answer. I'll give you 20 seconds. Okay, let's now move to the next slide and have a look at the answer. Answer number 1 is that smartphone dependency is the noun phrase, and it is correct grammatically. So you're going to do the same thing for number 2. Because convenience, smartphones are very popular. Because convenience, smartphones are very popular. Go ahead and pause the video now to identify if the underlined part is a noun phrase or a complete clause, and if it is correct grammar. I'll give you the same amount of time. Okay, let's reveal the answer. The answer is that convenience is a noun, but it is incorrect. How can we correct it? How can we correct the sentence? Well, we would have to add more details to this part of the clause to make it a full sentence. Right, so the answer was we can change because to because of. Because of convenience, smartphones are very popular. The adding of one word can sometimes make a world of difference. Different answer. Because requires a complete clause, so we can follow it with a clause instead of a noun. Because convenience, smartphones are very popular, we can change it to because they are convenient. Smartphones are very popular. Again, the change, an alternative change could have been because they are convenient, smartphones are very popular. So we're going to do the same thing again. Number 3, as a consequence of texting while driving, people have gotten into various serious accidents. As a consequence of texting while driving, people have gotten into various serious accidents. Go ahead and pause the video now to answer the question. Okay, let's reveal the answer. The answer was that texting while driving is the noun phrase, and it is correct grammatically. There are no mistakes. For the practice for number 4, smartphones are very useful because of the fact that they can do so many things. Or smartphones are very useful because of the fact that they can do so many things. Pause the video now to identify if the underlined part is a noun phrase or a complete clause, and if it is correct grammar. Go ahead and pause the video now to answer the question. Okay, let's turn the page and reveal the answer. That's right. They can do so many things is a complete clause and is correct grammatically. No mistakes to correct. So, just like with clauses, if the prepositional phrase comes first, you need a comma after the noun. If it comes later in the sentence, don't use a comma. Again, just like with clauses, if the prepositional phrase comes first, you need a comma after the noun, but if it comes later in the sentence, don't use a comma. This is another perfect slide for you to take a screenshot to help you further on in your exam practice. And some examples of the rule we just took a look at in the previous slide. Due to is the prepositional phrase. Smartphone use is the noun phrase, so we need a comma. Life is more convenient being the main clause. Because of prepositional phrase, smartphones, the noun, so we need a comma, followed by games are more popular than ever as the main clause. For another example, people are getting headaches as a result of bad posture while using smartphones. People are getting headaches is the main clause, and the prepositional phrase as a result of, and the noun phrase bad posture while using smartphones. So this sentence does not need a sentence because we have the main or full complete clause at the start of the sentence. Now let's just do some further practice to find the mistakes and correct them. So for number one, because of people use smartphones a lot, they are willing to pay a lot of money for them. Again, because of people use smartphones a lot, they are willing to pay a lot for them. So I'd like you to spot the mistakes and correct them. Pause the video now to answer the question. And the answer number is that we did not need of. So the correct result would have been because people use smartphones a lot. Not because of. The answer would have been because people use smartphones a lot. Or even because people are using smartphones a lot, they're willing to pay a lot of money for them. This is the right example of a way to change the sentence correctly. Number two, people become dependent on their smartphones because of social media. People become dependent on their smartphones because of social media. Go ahead and pause the video now to find the mistakes and then correct them. Right, let's look at the answer. Let's see if there are any mistakes to find. And the answer was that, yes, we did not need the comma because the clause cause comes second because of social media. people become dependent on their smartphones is the main clause, so we do not need a comma to separate it from the dependent clause. And number 3, because they love their smartphones. Because they love their smartphones, pause the video now to find the mistakes and correct them. Okay, let's look at the answer. Should be, you might have a lot of different answers for this one. That's right. The main problem was that this sentence is missing the second clause. Because they love their smartphones is not a complete sentence, it is missing the main clause. So a possible correction could have been, because they love their smartphones, they spend a lot of money on them. So again, the problem was that because they love their smartphones was missing the second primary independent clause. So for number 4, same thing again. As smartphones are expensive, not everyone can afford one. As smartphones are expensive, not everyone can afford one. This one should be quite easy. Go ahead and pause the video now to identify the mistakes and correct them. Okay, the answer, that's right. We were missing a comma because the cause clause, as smartphones are expensive, comes first, and we know this because it is indicated by the subordinator as. So when the clause comes first, you need a comma to separate it from the main clause. In this case, not everyone can afford one. Number 5, people love smartphones as a result of they are so useful. People love smartphones as a result of they are so useful. Go ahead and pause the video to find the mistakes, if any, and correct them. Okay, let's look at the answer. And that's right, this one was the most complicated of all. So, as a result of requires a noun phrase, not a clause. So, a possible correction would have been as a result of their usefulness. People love smartphones as a result of their usefulness. Number 6, a lot of people become dependent on smartphones due to the fact that always something new on social media. A lot of people become dependent on smartphones due to the fact that always something new on social media. Pause the video now to find and correct any mistakes you may find. All right, let's look at the answer. The answer was that The cause clause is missing a subject and a verb. So a possible correction might have been due to the fact that there is always something new on social media. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. I hope it was very useful to you in getting to grips with subordinators, prepositional phrases, their uses, the order to use them, and whether or not to use a comma. Okay, I think that's about everything. Thank you very much for listening to the end. I hope you found the practice sentences useful. I'd like to wish you a very good day. Bye now.